So to kick off, do you want to give us a little intro about what you do?
I'm a coach slash mentor, and some might say a consultant, an advisor, a trainer, a teacher, an educator, a speaker. But whatever it is that people call it, it's essentially just helping people discover themselves, getting more grounded, accessing their own wisdom, and ultimately helping them rely on themselves so they don't rely on me anymore. So the whole entire work is geared towards helping people listen to their own wisdom, that's the real mentor, as I call it, and be self-reliant in their life and be guided by the wisdom within. Um, so whatever kind of program or one-to-one work or any kind of speaking or anything I do is always geared that way now, to make people conscious of what wisdom is until it starts to run the show.
And could you speak a little bit about what wisdom is?
Oh man, I knew that question was coming at one point. So I will, and I'll start off by saying that anything I can say about it is not it. That's the mystery of wisdom. And I think that's one of the main reasons that people, I mean, it's not mainstream because it's indescribable.
Mm.
And we live in such a world of description, today's society. So anything I say is not it. Now, that being said, wisdom is an impersonal intelligence that comes from the divine, and it's beyond thought. This is just my understanding of it as far as I've seen so far, and as much as I allow myself to play with it on whatever level that is. It's a divine intelligence that is beyond thought. It is an impersonal guide. It is mysterious, so it can never be known. It can only be felt, and you can only be wisdom. You can't accumulate wisdom and use it later. It's a
Mm.
moment-to-moment intelligence. So we really have to drop ourselves, in many ways, as somebody becomes more conscious of the fact that the personal reality that they might be projecting or perpetuating over and over, that's unnecessary, and there's something much more useful, effortless, in harmony with reality that's available, always was, always will be. Then those structures start to fall away, and the nudges of wisdom get heard more clearly. And that self-interest and self-importance starts to become less important, less interesting, and wisdom starts to take the reins, drive the bus of life.
So I have a question coming in that I've been seeing that a lot. It seems like it's very easy when we start to touch this and the freedom of it to get the sense that somehow we can be excluded from it, that we have to relate to it in a proper way. Superstition can start to come in a little bit. Um, and so, can you speak a little bit to how you see perpetuating that personal reality versus being open to this wisdom coming through?
Sure. I guess there's two ways that come to mind. One is that considering that any type of in my experience of experimenting with it, it's become more and more evident that anytime I am suffering, uh, I'm way too much in a personal reality. I'm checked out of life. I'm not in harmony with the present moment, however you want to put it. And suffering is that nudge from wisdom to say, you're completely out of reality right now. Come back to reality. Uh, and that's just it. That's just wisdom going, hey, this way, hey, this way. And I might be caught up in something fantasizing or being over dramatic about something in the past, something a week ago, something I might have to do an hour from now. And my attention has been trapped in the details of patterned thinking that is not related to anything I'm up to in that present moment.
Mm.
And that's one way to perpetuate a personal reality that is not in line with anything that is happening here and now. So one of the silly examples I still use with people is that if I'm in my office right now and thinking about the kitchen and what to do in the kitchen and where the stove is, or is it on or off, or what I'll have for lunch, then my conversation with my client is going to be extremely inefficient and not in service. And vice versa. If I'm in the kitchen thinking about how my day went and what that conversation was about and how can I help them more, and my dish that I'm preparing will not be very tasty, or it will lack, the flavor or presence or love or anything that I can bring to it if I'm actually in the kitchen. So it's really just aligning ourselves with the present and the present moment for wisdom to be able to nudge us and guide us and shoulder tap us. Now that's one way. The other one is there's a real simple example in animals, I find. And again, one of the most common examples I'm using currently with my clients is that, as you know, I'm from Kenya. And in Kenya, I remember going to safaris, right? We've gone to about 6 or 7 safaris. It's a very common thing there. I mean, if you're living there and you're not going to safaris, then you shouldn't be in Kenya. You should live somewhere else, because it's one of the 7 wonders of the world. Not particularly the safari, but the Great Migration, as they call it. And so the Great Migration is that over 800,000 animals cross the Mara River at a certain period of the year, certain time of the year. Over 75% of those animals have never crossed the Mara River. They were born on this side of the river. Yet when the time comes, they have the sense that this is the way to go, and they all cross the river at the same time. So it's a huge event, right? The lions are all gathering because it's lunchtime. The crocodiles are there. It's lunchtime. And no matter what and how scary it is, or how many of those animals die or get swept up by the river, they will cross that river. They won't get scared and go back. They won't second think it. So that is an example of wisdom. That's wisdom guiding them to say, the pastures are greener on that side now. That's where the rains are. This is done. You got to go that way. And they get that nudge and they all go. Yeah. And we have over intellectualized our, accumulated knowledge and covered up that nudge.
Can you speak to what your nudges were?
Yeah, I have many. My first experience of wisdom I can speak to.
Yeah.
So my first experience of wisdom, you've probably heard this one before. You have, yeah?
I imagine.
Yes, it might sound a bit redundant to you. My very first experience of wisdom was, I was listening to Dr. Bill Pettit, who's a psychiatrist, a retired psychiatrist now, I think. And he was on a recorded, video that I was watching. And I was very judgmental of him because it was extremely unprofessional, according to me. I hadn't been introduced to any type of work that was around aligning ourselves with divinity or anything like that. I was like this new coach that was just looking for more tools and techniques and resources that I can help my clients with. And somehow I had been led to him. So I was listening to him on video, and I remember thinking, like, this guy's just stuttering, his light's not even proper. You can't even see his face properly. And this was a recorded thing on YouTube that he knows it's going to be out on YouTube. And he's a doctor. The least he could do is be prepared, And I remember his phone rang in the middle of his interview. Somebody was interviewing, and he literally went, "Oh, hang on a second." And he's like, "Why, I don't know who this is. Wait, how do I?" He's spending 30 seconds there, and I'm going, "Oh, this guy is just like, he's out to lunch." So I'm completely not interested, not fascinated. I almost seem like I have no respect, but it was just ignorance on my part. And I remember I was eating lunch in my living room, and I had splashed up the YouTube video on my big TV screen there in the living room. So I went in the kitchen to get my noodles and came back, and I was eating my noodles and listening to him. And he was sharing a story. And the story was about a woman that was interviewing a kid that was in jail, a young male. I think he was in his 20s or maybe just under 20. And the woman was interviewing this young man, and the young man was in jail for shooting his principal to death. So the woman was asking him, like, what made you do it? Why'd you do it? And the kid went, oh, I was really angry at the principal. And the woman went something along the lines of, like, what did you think right before you pulled the trigger? What was in your mind before you pulled the trigger? She was trying to extract, like, are you mentally stable or not? Like, what's going on with you that you shoot your principal? And I think the kid said something along the lines, again, like, oh, I was just really angry. Like, I just didn't like him. And she said again, no, what was going through your mind the moment before you pulled the trigger? And then the kid said, oh, it's funny, I was hearing a voice, and it was a really gentle voice. And as I walked up to the principal, because the story goes that he seen the principal in the hallway, and he was walking up to the principal, and as soon as he got in front of the principal in the hallway, in front of all the students and teachers, he pulled out his gun and put 5 in the chest of this principal, killing him instantly in front of everyone. And in those moments, the kid says, there was a voice saying, you don't have to do this, And he dismissed it, thinking that he's just doubting himself and being a wimp. And he kept proceeding towards the principal. And the voice again came and said, there's the side door. You can take that right now, and you don't have to do this. And again, he dismissed it, and he went ahead and shot the principal. So Bill Pettit is saying this story, and then Bill Pettit paused and goes, that wasn't doubt, that was wisdom speaking to him. And I'm eating my noodles, and all of a sudden I go, holy shit. And I fall in tears, literally for about half an hour. I cried. Because instantaneously in that very moment, even though I wasn't really paying attention to Bill Pettit anymore, because I didn't have, wasn't really interested in this man that was barely had the lighting correct for his interview. I was reminded of a specific event in my life in 2004, where I was doing a home invasion, and we were about to go in, and it was 3 a.m. and I heard a gentle voice. I heard a nudge saying, you don't have to do this. It was really inviting. It wasn't like, don't do this. It wasn't commanding. It was simply an invitation. You don't have to do this, And I also dismissed it as fear or doubt. And I remember I had hurt my leg that day. I still have the scar here on my left shin. And the voice said again that you can say your leg is hurt and you can go sit in the car. And I thought to myself, that's just Shenan being a wimp. Like, I'm just not listening to that voice. We're going in. And unfortunately, I did go in, and I did that home invasion that day. And in 2017, when I was listening to this recording, I was reminded of that specific event. As soon as he said wisdom, it all came back in absolute clear imagery in my mind. And I knew right away that that was wisdom. That was wisdom nudging me not to do something that I'm going to regret later, that I'm going to need healing from, that I'm going to face confusion because of. And that was my first experience of what wisdom was. It was just, I knew in that moment that was what was wisdom. And my respect grew a lot for Bill Pettit after that, because it really seemed like he helped me a lot in that moment. So all that ignorance went out the window, and I really appreciated him in that moment.
So what followed that initial recognition for you?
In terms of more recognition of wisdom?
Yeah, in terms of how you were navigating, what you were prioritizing, how you were working with people.
Yeah, so after that, I became extremely interested um, in what wisdom was. And unconsciously, I would say, I sort of found myself focusing on, not intentionally, it was unintentionally that I was prone, I was primed for wisdom. Like, what is wisdom? So if I was listening to somebody, if I was reading a book, I was kind of looking for that, but I didn't know I was looking for that. I just became really fascinated with something called wisdom that seems to be an impersonal universal intelligence. And that journey from that one first insight up until now has been just a complete exploration of how that is true. It's always been true. And I have been guided to different books, people. Um, I've been just seeing it and hearing it more and more. And in the beginning, like to answer your question of what immediately followed it was a lot of doubt, was a lot of like, that sounds unbelievable. It sounds like woo-woo. It sounds like it just doesn't sound right that there's a mysterious intelligence that you can never know, but you have access to every moment, and it's not yours. Because I'm lived a life of listening only to what is here, what I've gathered, what I know, who I think I am. And this just kind of pierced through all of that and continuously nudged me in obvious ways. You couldn't deny it. And the more I started to become familiar and acquainted with the fact that this is a very gentle, inviting, supportive intelligence, the more I experimented with it. And eventually, after the turning point, there's been many, but the turning point was that I had to be willing to be humbled by it. That was a big one, right? Like, you know, you have an idea and you don't know if it's wisdom. So what I find most of my clients do right now, which I did for so long back in that day, was to try and figure out if that is wisdom before taking that action, right? Like, I really want to know if that's wisdom or Shenan or dummy, uh, gathered dummy knowledge. And I realized that that's not the way to know it. The way to know it is to take action on it. And then you'll know if that was a really stupid idea or it was wisdom. And the more I was willing to experiment, the more I was willing to be humbled by it, it became extremely clear over time. The feeling of wisdom is different than the feeling of personal Shenan. And it became easier. But I had to be willing to fall over and over again, and not personalize that fall, not identify with any of the results that might come from messing it up over and over again. And that's what I feel like, and that's allowed me to get acquainted with wisdom a lot more and allow it to continuously humble me. Even to this day, there's deeper layers of wisdom I feel I've accessed. And with every layer, it's like, oh, I don't know. Well, how are you going to know? You can sit back and analyze or calculate, or you can just go for it and find out later. And mind you, I've taken action on some pretty stupid things and found out later it's just like, man, that just was not wise. But you find out and then you move on. You don't sit and judge yourself for it.
So that brings up a comment that I've heard you make a couple times, and that is that you seem to notice how much people use fear, how much weight people put on fear in their decision making. Can you speak a little bit to fear and fearlessness?
Yeah, I don't know how popular this will be. It hasn't been very popular, but this is the way I see it. It is what I see as truth. There's a few angles to which I can speak from that I think would be helpful, even though it might not be liked, if that makes sense. One is that fear it only comes into play when there's self-interest, when there's self-importance, right? That if you're living a life based on what's in it for me, there's going to be fear in play because there is no you. And fear is a signal saying you're out of reality. You're in some personal illusory state that does not exist. It's just a psychological structure. So that's one. That's the unpopular one. How dare you tell me my own existence doesn't exist? The second thing is, this has been really helpful for me because I explored fear and how it's created by thought. It doesn't exist in reality outside of a thought bubble. And it's always related to something. It cannot exist on its own. Like love can exist on its own. Fear has to be related to something, a decision, a past, how you look, how you feel, who you are, and so on. And as I explored that more and more, I felt like I was getting more and more clear on what fear was, but it was still there. And then I read a quote by Byron Katie that shifted things for me. And I don't know what she meant by this, but the quote said, "The teacher of fear can never bring peace to the world." And for me, how it landed within me is that it doesn't matter if you figure out fear or you overcome fear or you empower yourself out of fear or you make friends with fear. If fear is the topic, there's not going to be peace because that's what the topic is. It's always fear, fear this, fear that, how to overcome, how to be friends with it, have a cup of tea with fear. All of that is unnecessary. And since then, it's been like, oh, fear, feel it. It's unnecessary to go beyond that, to add any description, any word, any context, any identity. Even the word fear has started to vanish. It's like there is a discomfort. Feel it. As soon as you put a word to it, you have reduced the feeling into mere man-made meaning instead of just feeling the sensation and then moving on, or moving on while the sensation is there. And it becomes easier and easier to be fearless. And the last one has been to see that fear is desire turned inside out and vice versa. So as long as I do have desire, I will always have fear. And the less I've found myself with desire, the less I've found myself with fear. And the less I've found myself with desire is because the more I've understood that desire itself is a product of the psychological structure named Shenan, right? There's no desire outside of that. If everything is one, how can it desire anything else inside of it? Since it is already it. So with that understanding progressing in its own way, unfolding in its own way, it's just become more and more clear that there's no need for desire. You know, I've just started to enjoy myself more in whatever I do. Needs and wants have kind of gone out the window as well. There's basically three needs: food, shelter, clothing. Anything outside of that is a psychological need. If it's a psychological need, it's not real. And this is not to demonize it, it's to recognize it. You know, it's like you can have needs, just understand what kind of needs they are. And if I can understand that I have a psychological need, I'm so much more lighthearted with it because I know that it's not a real need. It's not a survival need. It's a psychological need. So I'm playful with it. So there's less fear and less fear and less fear. But there's no focus on having less fear or understanding fear.
I'm hearing people protesting that psychological needs are not real. Can you
Yeah,
expand on that one a little bit?
huh. Um, so there is, there's different levels of awareness. And on one level of awareness, if I can illustrate it with an example, on one level of awareness, this is a phone. On another level of awareness, there's a gathering of subatomic particles. And another level of awareness, it's just space with a gathering of subatomic particles that creates a matter that we call phone. So on that level of space, there's just space. There's space between everything, between skin cells, between the matter that makes the frequency for the phone, between everything that is in form. In between and around it, before it and after it, there's always space. The space is permanent. Anything that comes in and out is temporary. Even if that temporariness is a million years, if it came into form, it will go out of form. So on one level of awareness, space is real, it's permanent, and it always was there and will be there. And the psychological structure is the same. Because the body came into form, the body is going to go. The psychological structure came into form by thinking and identifying with the thinking, and then accumulating on top of that thinking, and identifying with that thinking, and then calling that an individual. That has been perpetuated for thousands of years as individuality, as personality, as a reality, when in fact it's just simply an expression. And because we have started to make that the center, collectively speaking, we have made that the center from which we relate to the world with, relate to people, places, and things through a me, we think it's real. And as I think it was Terence McKenna that says, that if everybody is insane, it doesn't mean that that's truth. So to me, that is the definition of insanity, is to relate to the world from a personal self, because a personal self is not the inherent fundamental reality. There is one beyond that. And this happens to be a projection of thought. And if we make this the center and the fundamental reality to relate to the world with, we are living out of an illusion. We are living from an illusion. And because we perpetuate it and we teach our kids that, and they teach their kids that, it doesn't mean it's real. It just means it's been projected and perpetuated, and therefore looks real because all of society is now based upon that. But there is a reality beyond that. So from that level of awareness, psychological structures are simply psychological structures, thought projections, bundles of thinking patterns that we identify with, and we think it's us. And all suffering is because of that. All suffering is born from the illusion of separateness. And if we consider that there's a space within which all of that is happening, and we start to get established in that space more, then in my own experience, that psychological structure, even though it's still there and it always will be there, it becomes an expression of divine nudges, wisdom, intelligence, and so on, instead of a product of accumulated knowledge that is then applied to the world. So another way to say it in a very brief way is that we're living in think tanks, right? There's a bunch of think tanks that operate society. And when we're born inside of these think tanks, we're picking up information from what's already circulating in those think tanks or thinking spheres, however you want to put it. So for example, I'm born in Kenya, I'm Indian, I'm now Canadian, I'm an introvert. So I'm picking up all these things and I'm identifying with that. And that limits me. That creates a separate self. Like you're white. I relate to brown people, man. Who's this guy? Right? And Shenan can be an expression of that accumulation, or I can be the expression of divine nudges. But I can't serve two masters. So the journey is that if you are born in that, as everybody is, because that's today's society, the journey is to clear that out to become expressions of the divinity, because that's how it's originally made. That is the origin. And if you look at animals, again, or babies, or plants, they're all expressions of the divine. They have unique expressions, but they're not expressions of what they collect when they get here. They're expressions from within. So you become a vessel that is listening from your heart and making sense. Your mind makes sense of what you've picked up from your heart, and that goes outwards. Or you become somebody who's just picking stuff up from the world and regurgitating that, reorganizing that, and putting that outwards. The biggest difference in my life I've seen is that the metaphor of a sun comes to mind. The sun, as we know it, generates heat and gives it out. It doesn't pick up heat and give it out. It generates it and gives it out. It's a giver. There's no taking. It's a complete giver. We are givers if we are expressing the divine, because the divine is an unlimited well of incredible intelligence. And when we're established in our heart, we're just receiving from within the soul into the heart. The mind becomes an expression outwards. And that's one way that we start to see that we have no needs, because all our needs are met by the Creator. All the needs of connection and loneliness and companionship and anything, everything is met. Self-esteem, confidence, it all comes from there. You receive it and you give it up. You just give it up. So in my life, it has been a uncovering of that, or rather even letting that unfold more and more. And when doubt is there, then I let the doubt be. There's been vices, there's been shortcomings, and the game changed when I just fully accepted that that's a shortcoming or that's a vice, and I have no interest or desire to change it. I'll just live that way.
Mm-hmm.
And then they either fall away, or if they're really complicated, they get expressed, which sometimes sucks. But that's the way it is. You get cleared out. And then you get more and more clear and more and more clear and more and more clear.
What do you see as the significance of their getting expressed?
Just that it clears out the vessel. There has been this world, the society that we live in my view, is very, very thickly layered with a whole bunch of systems, ideas, opinions, and very complex layers. And when we're born into that and we start picking that up and unconsciously, we really hang on to it, and we kind of shape it our own way. So sometimes it's really lodged in there, right? And so I find in my explorations of this is that when it's really lodged, sometimes it doesn't fall away. Sometimes it has to be outwardly expressed. Like if you really feel like fighting someone, that might fall away. But sometimes you're just gonna have to fight someone before that energy leaves you. Like that. The benefit is the clear vessel. The more clear the vessel, the more the divine can express itself, how it was designed to be.
Do you have any how do you see the consideration of, you know, if I choose to fight somebody, um, that I'm just passing it forward, like
What do you mean? Can you expand?
uh, putting into the world something like it almost feels like a sense of possession.
Putting an idea or a desire out there?
Um, yeah, if something has become lodged in me, and then I act it out in order to move it out of myself. Um, I know people, myself sometimes included, where there is a sense of like, am I just putting that on somebody else? Am I playing hot potato with this thing?
So your question is how to do that in a more finesse way, or
Or how you see that. If you don't see it that way, I'm curious how you see it. If more finesse isn't necessary.
so how I see that, and it might not directly speak to that, but I'm going to speak to what I hear.
Yeah.
How I see it is that if you're very sincere with yourself, you don't need to be sincere or honest with anybody but yourself. And you're very, very honestly, that's the game. We often think we have to be vulnerable and share our vomits with everyone. Your relationship is with the one and only, and everyone is just a fragment of it. So if you're really sincere with yourself, you're willing to be humbled, then all you got to do is live your life in the most sincere way possible. You don't even have to live it humbly, right? You just be sincere and honest, and you live. As you're living that way, there's going to be obstacles, there's going to be confusions, there's going to be limits and edges that you encounter. And in those moments, you're guided to whatever makes sense in that moment to do, you do. And if life is taken that way, then you yourself don't have to dislodge anything. If there's something that has to be dislodged, it will be done in that process as well.
Mm.
There's going to be things that are sometimes that are lodged that get expressed that you're not going to like at all. In fact, I've experienced many times, not even once, but many times where I was just like shaking and shivering from just like, oh, I hate this. I fucking hate it. But if you stay with it, that's how it seems to work, is that it does dislodge. It does move through you, expressed outwards or fallen away inwards.
Mm-hmm.
And then you do sense that you have more space, more energy, more clarity, more perspective, a much more cleaner way to relate to the world with, as the world, as presence, as impersonal life, not a personal individual self. And that is a signal, a very clear indicator that you're on the right path. So you can, at that point, sulk over how much you didn't like what just happened, or you can start moving along, or you can do both. Either one's fine. Sometimes I do both. That wasn't fair. It really hurt.
Uh,
Okay,
I
pick yourself back up and move it.
one of the things that I like seeing in people, seeing different paths that people are on and whatnot, um, is there's almost a sense of like an anti-aging quality
Mm,
in certain paths where there's like more rawness of expression and more honesty of
yeah,
and not honesty in the sense of, oh, I need to be honest with people, but in just deeply in touch with what's moving through you, and such like a softening of edges in that of like, oh, I'm not protecting
yes,
myself from myself, I'm not protecting the world from me, I'm not protecting myself from the world. And this is like almost like a
totally.
baby-like quality in that. Um, and having known you, Elise refers to it as like the grandmother or grandfather baby.
Mm.
Um, seeing the baby and the elderly,
Yes,
is a life well lived. But having known you
yes.
for maybe a decade now,
It's been that long. Yeah, wow.
yeah, you it occurs as you occur as younger than when I met you, in some
Well, that's
sense.
nice to know.
Yeah, yeah.
My spirit is definitely more alive, and I'm much more lighthearted, much more silly, much more childlike.
Mm.
Yeah, so in that sense, I can see it. If I stare at the mirror too long, then I'll find some shortcomings with my face. I read a really nice quote. I think it was my roomie that said, before mirrors existed, that to see your own face, you would have to bow to see it
Mm.
in a still lake or ocean. And that is the essence of humility, is that to see your own face, you would have to bow. And then, of course, mirrors were invented, and
All hell broke
now we can
loose.
stare ourselves for it. This eyebrow is a little bit crooked. I wonder when that happened. I hate my face.
I'm having another thread come in that I would love to hear you riff on a little bit if you're down. That is permission. Your permission for the range of expression.
So what do you mean by that? Permitting myself to express?
Um, there's a way in which, uh, from your past, which you've referenced, doing home invasions is not, the average Sunday for most folk. Um, and some people might hide something like that, ever having done something like that. I know that you've worked with some of the most outcast stereotypes in society, um, and that you're able to meet that in the same way as having a cup of coffee, it seems. Uh, that you seem to have a remarkable breadth of acceptance for what is being expressed in life through people that we might identify as and take an issue with or try to resist or control, reject, deny. So there feels like there's just this massive holding of everything, a willingness to look. Even this story of the shooting of the principal, there was a rawness of your feeling of that. It was like something that was very dark, but that your system can actually look at and have move through rather than trying to deny or have a big reaction to. Uh, does that give you a little bit more to
Yeah.
work with?
Yeah, yeah, it does. It gives a lot. Uh, it's so it's funny to me, in an embarrassing way almost. It's like one of those insights. It's like, oh, it's simple, you know. So here's how I've come to that with what you've expressed, that seems like I have this wide breadth and space where I can, speak to anyone, no matter how dark it seems, and seems like I'm just having a cup of coffee and we're talking about the weather, is I'll say two things. One thing that I've read, something Bruce Lee wrote. This came in way after. I've just read it maybe 3-4 weeks ago, but it comes to mind right now. He said that before his training of Kung Fu, the spiritual part of martial arts, spiritual side of it, before his training, he's seen a kick as a kick and a punch as a punch. And after vigorously training for decades into the spiritual art of Kung Fu, he started to see the mechanics and the art and the expression and the precision. And then after his training, he came to see that a kick is still just a kick and a punch is still just a punch. And there's so many, I think Confucius, his teacher, says the same thing about a mountain. A mountain is just a mountain. And as you get wisdom to what the essence of a mountain is, it blows your mind. But at the end of that, you come to see a mountain is still just a mountain. So in the process, you're all wowed by it. But at the end, it's just like, oh, that's just what it was in the beginning. So in other words, I think Lao Tzu says, who cares? Is how he puts it. A little direct. Now, how I've come to see is that I used to look at this when I got into coaching as holding space. That's something that is very valuable skill in coaching. That is something that is very useful to practice and become an artist, to hold space for people's expression, for whoever they are, however they're being at that moment, whatever they've done in the past, all of that. You hold a massive space for them. But at the end of that cycle, I'm sure there's many more layers to it as well that I don't see. I came to see that it's just as simple as seeing that there is an essence to every appearance. And I had to see the essence in myself. And I didn't try to see it. It spontaneously occurred that I started to see, oh, there's an essence to every appearance. Nothing is as it appears to be. Nothing is, even the matter we talked about, right? Subatomic particles create this thing. But the essence is space. It's not the subatomic particles even. Even at the tiniest microscopic level, it's subatomic particles, yet that's not the essence. And in that same sense, people are not who they appear to be in any sense of the word. Their past, their personality, their character, their flaws, their shortcomings, their praises, their confidence, their wins, their achievements, none of it. So if I can see the essence and I speak to the essence, then everything that is appearing within the essence is all welcome. I don't have to hold the space. I don't have to bring intention. I don't even have to bring attention because the essence is doing all of the work. Because the essence is who they are. And I have found that when I'm in that presence within myself, then that presence within myself pulls people into that presence within themselves. And it's the same presence. It's not one for them and one for me. It's the same presence, but they start to maybe feel safer in their own presence, which they might not have explored. They also don't know that that's what's going on. They just feel more presence. They'll credit me for it. They'll attribute it to me, which is why often in my conversations, I'm always pausing people and going, no, it's coming from you and you want to get in touch with the presence in you because, you can't rely on me. And this is often in my speech too, that Shenan himself is pretty delusional and neurotic, just like you are. It's fine. but presence is not. And so when people get, pointed there and they start to feel that, and that's what's holding everything. So space is holding this room and all the furniture in it. It's not the other way around. And if I put dark, murderous pictures on this wall, and anybody can walk in this room and go, oh my God, that's a dark room. The space won't be affected. It doesn't, it's neutral. And that's what I see essence as. Essence is neutral. It's formless. So whatever level of presence that I've reached within myself, that I'm established in, not in and out of, but I'm established in a daily, habitual way, occasionally thinking myself out of it. That's the level of presence that's touched within them. And the deeper I go within myself, the more clear presence I can bring. And that's one of the downstream consequences, unintentional consequences of me being very interested in clearing myself out. Not so that I can bring that, but because I find that that is how it's supposed to be. So I explore within myself. And one of the very tiny consequences happens to be that you just bring that presence, that clarity, that childlike presence wherever you go. That's what holds the space. So I don't know if that speaks to it, but I think it's a little bit of a different angle than, one that is holding the space versus space that is holding both of us.
Yeah, no, it speaks to it beautifully.
Yeah, that's been potent the last 1.5 to 2 years, I would say. Much more potent than it was.
So when you work with people, is this what you're doing?
What I've just described?
Yeah, just having conversations. Yeah, I'm curious what that looks like.
So right now, there's just 2 offerings.
Mhm.
The Be Human program, that is a group sort of exploration for 12 weeks. And there's one-to-one coaching. And it's funny because 2 years ago, I was like, oh, I'll do that, and I'll do this, and I'll do a 3-day intensive, and I'll do this. And at one point, I just came to see that I kind of just want to live life. I don't want to shape everything into categories. And these 2 offerings just seem to make sense that it's landing with people. So the group program is me, it's more of a monologue because it's a group. I can't go individual with each person in the group about their own lives. So I'll share with them what I've seen about presence, for example, 1 week. The next week, I'll share with them my experimentations, my explorations, my discoveries on listening, deeper ways of listening. And whatever they pick up, they pick up. And I always encourage them to go use my insights as a pointer. Don't apply my insights to your life. If you use it as a pointer, you'll get your own insights that'll be custom made for you for your own life. But they have to be willing to explore that themselves. The support is there, but it's different in a group than one-to-one. One-to-one is different right now in the sense that I'm just trying to feel where the person is. It doesn't matter what they bring to the table, whatever they're saying, but I'm kind of getting the sense, okay, this is where they are, and this is their edge. So I'll say, hey, I see something. Would you like for me to share it? And they'll say, yeah, sure. And I'll share just that edge. Nothing else. I'm not going to share 10 edges later, just that edge. It seems to really expand them because that's what they're ready for, but that's their blind spot. And I'll just share that one edge, and that's it. That's the session. And they'll go away with it in a very rich way and let it unfold. When we come back, and they control the conversation. I listen. And then if I hear something, I'll speak to what I hear, and only to what I hear, not to what I think or what. There's not much me there. I'm just kind of hearing or sensing, rather, feeling what would be their edge right now. And then I would pause and ask permission, and every time it's yes, but I still want to ask permission. And then I'll let them know, and yeah, that's the way it seems to be. And that one-to-one, it accelerates the process of evolution, as opposed to the group program.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that's where it's landed to. Yeah.
Cool. Do you have anything else you want to speak to or share?
Um, I just want to say this. I think this is if there's anything valuable out of this entire conversation, to me, this would be it. Look for people that point you within. That's it.
Mm,
That's it. Those are the teachers. Look for people that point you within,
yes.
not to their way or a new way or a reorganized way. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you, man. It's great to see you again.
Yeah. It's great to see you always, Silas. Thank you.
Thanks.